Hope you guys at home are doing this. Do you ever see the Wiz? It's in my head right now. Hello and welcome back to those of you who have been with us before at W Stream Foundation with this wonderful nutritive ability to get together and share the things we know about food and how it can benefit our health. My name is Nathan Lyon. I have a tendency to talk a lot. I'm the youngest of three boys. I'm from Arlington, Virginia. I earned a health science degree with a public health minor from James Madison University. I went to the West Coast and completed a course to become a medical technician from UCLA Extension. And then I thought, who wants to do that? And then I went to Le Cordon Bleu to become a chef. The last 15 years, I've been sharing my knowledge of fresh seasonal cuisine on television, and the last television show that I did earned me an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Culinary Host. And there's one last thing, I have a seasonal cookbook. And here we are, full circle. I just wanted to thank everyone at W Stream Foundation for making this happen. There is somebody that you may know, Hans Rufer, who's known as the chef without a stomach and 95% of his esophagus. He was the one that pulled me in and introduced me to W Stream Foundation. And I wanted to thank him first and foremost. Secondly, a big introduction to Mary Eve Brown, who is a clinical oncology dietitian at John Hopkins Hospital. Welcome, Mary Eve. How are things going?
Oh, chef, great here in Baltimore because we've got really good weather.
And she's rubbing it in.
Yeah, you know, Mary Eve's weather is about 25 degrees cooler than it is here in Austin, Texas, where I'm here with Sarah Foreman, this voice.
Hello, everybody.
And Sarah Foreman will be the one relaying the questions. If you have any questions or comments, type them in, and she will relay them to either myself or Mary Eve. Okay, so yeah, I think we're ready to go. I only get you for an hour, and I have separation anxiety, so my tensions are a little high. So let's all take a little breath, relax, because we're joining each other around this dinner table and mass media from all over the world.
We have somebody here from Ohio, from
Go Bucks, go Bucks.
Go Buckeyes! Buckeyes!
Saskatchewan, Nigeria,
Whoa!
Los Angeles. My sister's here.
Oh, hello, Karen. So we're clearly a big family from all over the world. Don't fret if you know someone who may benefit from either Mary Eve's information via your questions or through some of the things that I'm sharing with you today. This will all be logged on the W Stream Foundation, I believe .org.
This will be on the YouTubes. It's being recorded,
There
and
you
if
go.
you've signed up, you'll get the recipes as well.
Perfect. So this is not the only time. So don't fret if you have friends or family that would benefit from this information, because it will always be available to you, be it now and in the future. Okay. So how do you start? Well, you start at the beginning. So let's start with a soup. Sir, soup or salad? How about a soup? Let's start with a soup. I'm going to start with a sweet potato carrot soup. We're going to start with something really easy, okay? The thing about a sweet potato carrot soup is all the ingredients are available all year round, but I'm thinking the holidays are coming up in theory, right? So fall is right on the corner, and people do start asking me even now, midsummer, about what recipes to make for Thanksgiving and the holidays. This is a really simple one. You can make it well ahead of time, freeze it, warm it back up when your guests arrive. Bob's your uncle, you're done, okay? So sweet potato, this is a monster sweet potato. Any sort of sweet potato will work. And I love sweet potatoes because I love the flavor, I love the health benefits, and it's really great. It doesn't really spike your blood sugar the way that a regular potato would. So you've got the benefit of the health, the flavor, and the color as well. It's so visually appealing. Now, this is just a regular peeler. And for those of you that have seen me before, bear with me, but for everyone who's new, a peeler is it's like a magician thing that's happening here, because it has two blades. One is actually on this side and the one is on this side. So as a chef, we try to always save as much time as possible. that's not saving me a lot of time. But if I go up and down and I use both blades, that saves me 50% of the time. Yeah. So if I gave you, a big bucket of these things to peel, you would definitely start to learn how to really make things go a lot faster in the kitchen. And don't be afraid, you're not going to harm it. You're not doing any sort of disrespect by peeling extra fast. But you do want to make sure that if it's not peeling very well, and your peeler happens to be a 100% metal or pewter one handed down from your great grandmother, you may want to get a new one and to keep that one just nailed to the wall.
And Chef, I was just thinking the same thing, because I think sometimes people don't want to spend the money on a really good kitchen product, but in the end, they're so much better. Don't buy your peelers at the dollar store. I mean, because the blades aren't as good, so you spend more time trying to get through the potato or whatever you're peeling. Invest in really good kitchen tools.
I'm all about kitchen tools, but I'm all about less is more. So I don't need 4 or 5 of these bad boys, but the one that I do have really needs to be sharp. Okay. So we peeled that thing in no time flat. What I always suggest also is, regardless of how large or how small of a meal that you're making, it's good to have a little bowl to the side for your compost, or whatever you guys want to use your compost for. It's
Or
nice
freeze it
have.
to pull out later as part of a stock.
Yeah, for sure. You can totally even dehydrate these bad boys, the skins, which is actually quite nice. But you don't want to save yourself from having to grab this and go over to the trash can and come back, or go over to your compost over here. Just have a bowl to the side. It makes things a lot easier. Okay. The peeling trick also works with anything else, like carrots. Okay, so I did go ahead and peel and chop some carrots just to get this out of the way.
We welcome Melanie, New Jersey in the house, she says.
New Jersey in the house. Tomatoes. What? I-95. Melanie, I'm from Arlington, Virginia. I made that drive so many times. And yeah, it is true. You got the best tomatoes. Okay. So you haven't missed very much just yet, Melanie. All we've done is we've peeled a sweet potato. This is one I would consider a large sweet potato. The recipe calls for 2 medium, but if you got one of these big mama jamas, then go for it. The wonderful thing about this recipe also, you just cook it until it's done. So I'm not asking people to have crazy knife skills on this thing. If you find that your knife is very dull, for goodness sakes, get it sharpened. You can go ahead and bring it to your farmer's market. There's usually someone to sharpen it there. If you have a butcher nearby, they usually have sharpening there. And there's also online places where you can put your knives in a little box and ship it off, and they will send you your knives sharpened back to you without you even having to leave the house. Okay. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and just give these a rough chop. Really be careful. You only get a certain amount of fingers when you're born, so be careful not to take those puppies off. I find them very helpful for tying your shoes, unless you have Velcro for shoes, in which case you're way cooler than me, and I should get the Velcro shoes. Okay. So I'm going into 2 things that are orange. We're talking about beta carotene, right?
Yep.
Really helpful. Nothing's going to spike your blood sugar. So many wonderful ingredients. Now, normally, if you were to boil a sweet potato, a lot of the nutritive things that are in a sweet potato leach out into the water. We're not worried about that here, because we're going to make a soup out of it. So the stock that we're going to be cooking this in is actually going to have all the vitamins and nutrients in it. So we won't lose any by simmering it. Okay. And what I have here is an apple.
Mary Eve is shaking her head, yes. Nodding.
Well, the other thing is that soups can be really well tolerated for somebody getting chemotherapy or radiation soon after gastrectomy. You can drink a lot of your nutrition. And so I love this idea. And also the color, right? Each color gives you a different cancer fighter. So when you're looking kind of at things, if eating some of these things is difficult to do, can I puree it into a soup? And it just sits a lot better.
Fantastic. And you can do a lot. Like after we cook this down, we're going to add a few flavors to it. So we're going to have this base, delicious base of the soup. We're going to add some flavors so you can kind of sort of peer out in different directions and make it your own. Okay. An apple, just for some natural sweetness. Now, I grew up with one of those apple cores, this pewter ones, we go, just like a blooming onion. We're not going to use that. One, I don't have one. And 2, I was always concerned about pushing the core with my thumb, because sometimes, it's not very cool. So what you can do is see where the bottom of the apple is. There's the top. So it kind of goes straight down. I'm just gonna slice on one side. And I'm gonna turn it 90 degrees, and I'm going down on that side of the core. I've done 4 slices. That's a chef's snack for later. Okay, that's the core.
Because you know the core is edible. There are people who eat the whole apple.
You know,
I have seen that.
Yeah.
one of my recurring nightmares, Mary Eve, is that I eat something like popcorn or an apple core and I have no floss and I wake up in a push sweat. The idea of not having floss would just, I would have so much fear in my heart of hearts that I wouldn't be able to eat the apple core.
So we go apple picking,
Maybe
every
if I
fall.
hold it in my hand. Oh yeah, apple picking for sure.
And when my son was little, he says, I have one. And I gave him an apple and we're driving down the road. He goes, another one? And I'm like, where's the core? He goes, I ate it. I forgot to tell him not to eat that.
It's growing a whole tree and oh, this is terrible. That's where we all went wrong. Okay. Having a lot of fun today, which is really great. So I have in here, it's like a magic trick. I'm gonna pull out a rabbit. I have carrots, sweet potato, and apple. Okay, just those 3 things, nothing crazy. I'm gonna add to it. Let's do 4 cups of water. Okay, this water will become stock once I add what I consider my favorite stock. Okay, this is better than bouillon.
That's not homemade.
It's not homemade.
No.
Better than bouillon. It has the most flavor, I find. If you want to make homemade, go for it. I always want you guys to go with homemade because it's less wasteful, very nutritive. But if you're getting box stock, yeah, those little pop tab box stock, try this instead. Because I love the stock that this makes. I don't get paid for them. I just happen to really like them. I'm going to share what I know, my knowledge. And you can just take a spoonful of this and just add it to the water. I don't actually have to add this concentrated broth to a bowl and then whisk the bowl until it makes something that looks like a stock. Just dump it all in the pot. Save yourself some cleanup. Okay. So that's really simple. This goes back in the fridge.
So just to recap
Delicious.
of what you have in there, sweet potatoes, carrots, apples.
And chicken stock
Awesome.
or vegetable stock. Okay.
I think miso would go into that really well too.
White miso mixed sweet would be absolutely amazing.
Yum.
Miso.
Mary Eve, you and I, we talked about this last time. We're gonna hit the road. Thank you already ahead of time to Debbie's Green Foundation for that big 18-wheeler we got.
Tour bus.
Okay, so this is gonna go over a high heat. Once it comes to a simmer, I'm gonna lower the heat, put a lid on, and we'll cook it for like 30 minutes until it's done. What if it's not done in 30 minutes? Keep cooking it, okay? No pressure here. We're going to put it on some heat. There we go, and let it go. Okay, that's going. We're gonna let it come to a boil first. No pressure. So we already have a soup that's well underway. If I forget, when we make this soup, we blend it with immersion wand.
Oh,
If you want to
sorry.
keep cooking it down until it's more of a.
Why is he blurry?
I know. I'm
Nice.
gonna.
What
We
was
got just had a little blurry moment, and
Wait,
sometimes that happens.
I
okay.
think with my
We're
own-
back.
I think the blurriness was my own emotional.
We're feeling the energy.
I was trying to think of thought bubble, and the thought bubble kept getting away from me. That probably got a little blurry for me. So if you like mashed potatoes any time of the year, then you will really also very much enjoy this being like a sweet potato puree. You can make it thicker by adding less stock, or just keep cooking it down before you puree it. And it's going to be nice and thick, full of flavor. It's just beauty to look at. Okay, so sweet potato carrot soup, well underway. We're good to go. Next thing, we've just come off of spring, but you can still find them out there pretty darn fresh. And I'm talking about asparagus. Okay, we're going to make an asparagus frittata. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can tell how fresh asparagus is just by looking at it. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, and let's take a look at this one. One of these things does not look like the other. We'll come back to this. Okay, One of these is fresher than the other one. You can easily see why.
Can you guess which?
You guess which? I have.
Asparagus is also super easy to digest for people who don't have a stomach.
Oh, well,
Super
thank
easy. Yeah,
Very
the
good.
tips
Oh.
or peel the stalk part, but the tender part of the tip works really well with people who don't have a stomach.
Perfect. So while you ponder over what Mary Eve has just shared with you as far as how easy it is to digest, we're heating up this pan. It doesn't have to be super hot, so I'm going to add some butter, right? You can add olive oil or neutral oil if you want to, just enough to where the frittata doesn't stick. I do like nonstick pans, but only for eggs, only for egg products. Onions, diced onions go in there, okay? You don't have to always wait for the heat to come up to hear that. It's gonna cook anyway, okay? So we can sort of leave that alone. It's over like a medium, about a medium heat. What's gonna happen is the butter will melt underneath the diced onion. I'll start to hear it sizzle, and we can get back to that, all right? So for those of you that chose this one as the older asparagus, you're right. This one is fresher. And the reason why is asparagus grows so fast that after they're cut from the ground, they're quickly cooled off in ice water and they're put in these large containers and then put in pretty much dark containers. Even in a dark container, the asparagus doesn't know it's cut and it will still search for the sun for photosynthesis. So this used to look like this. If allowed to sit a long time, this will also continue to grow and curve. So you always want ones that are pretty narrow, and the tips aren't like black and like mushy. You want them nice and fresh and green. Okay, the bottoms shouldn't be popped at all, and that's a really fresh asparagus. Okay, so moving on. What else do we need? Well, we need eggs. What was that?
Preserved lemon.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Williams, so please can we get a complete requirement, food and fruits, also mode of preparation directly message. All these recipes will be sent to you if you signed up for this event. And I see Debbie Dream Foundation like that, so
Perfect.
you are connected.
So while the onions are going, we'll talk about a few of the other ingredients. Okay, we talked about the asparagus, onions, butter, we have eggs. I'll sort of share with you how I like to whisk. But let's get back to the other ingredient, this little jammy gem. This is a preserved lemon. This is the one thing you may or may not be familiar with. They're easy to make. It does take some time. You would take a lemon, you would quarter it, fill it full of salt, juice a lot of lemons, and put it in a little quart container and shove them all in there and let them sit in your fridge for like 4 months. Or you can just buy it. Preserved lemon. Okay. We're not going to use the inside of the lemon. We're only going to use this zest portion. So what I'll do is I'll cut it in half, I'll quarter it, and then what I'll do is I'll take my thumb and just push my thumb right underneath the skin. It doesn't matter if I just maul the heck out of this
I can get
air
this
portion
Lower
that the juice
camera
is
here,
usually
down
found.
here.
So this is the inside portion where the juice is usually found, and this is the outer skin or the pith portion. This is what we're using. We are not using this.
And chef, what's the advantage of a preserved lemon over a fresh? Like, why would you choose to use the preserved lemon in this recipe over a fresh lemon?
So fresh lemon brings acidity, whereas preserved lemon brings a floral quality to it. It's hauntingly lemony. It's very, very floral, but it doesn't have that acidity that fresh lemon will have. It's a very different animal altogether. I mean, time does change things, but this is one of those things where it brings like a, if you've ever had Middle Eastern Moroccan food mostly, and you'll have a tagine, and sometimes they'll have a little preserved lemon there with the dried fruits and garbanzo beans and couscous, and it just smells, I don't know, it just smells lovely, like a fresh thing with lemon flowers. It's just wonderful.
I wonder if it's also then easier to digest if it has less of the bite to it.
One would think so. It's been sitting in a solution for a long time, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little saute. If you want to try this at home, the best way to do it for sauteing, or you can just stir it, that's fine too. But if you want to saute,
Mary finds this very humorous.
if you
Don't.
want to
Don't do
saute,
that.
you can practice
Unless you have your wiener dog to eat it up after you drop it on the floor.
Thank you.
Step aside. This is what you want to do. Straight up and straight back. There's none of this upsy downsy stuff, okay? When you saute, you'll never see somebody do that. You don't want to help them. Just makes me nervous even playing around. The shape of the pan is like when kids go off ramps, right? So it has this little ramp. So all I have to do is push it away and then catch it. Push it away and then catch it. Or pull the pan back in order to catch it as it falls. There's none of this, okay? Just forward and backward. If you want to practice, or it's even safer, that's even safer. Just go ahead and push, and it'll fall right back in. Okay, so that's a quick saute. I'll keep letting those cook along. So we have the butter, the onions, and of course that preserved lemon I just introduced you to. We have what else? A little bit of salt and pepper to help that break down just a smidge. Right. You want to season as you go. Kosher salt, not table salt, and freshly ground black pepper. Not that McCormick's like red and white box that you got. It's massive and it's just sand. It's just done. You want to use fresh seasoning. Okay, because that all. The black pepper has all the essential oil in it, and that's what we're tasting. It's floral, has a little bit of heat, but it's actually kind of floral, really good black pepper, right? So let's get back to these eggs. I have 7 eggs, okay? When you're whisking anything, be it for baking, eggs, what have you, you don't want to use a circle. You don't want to go around like that. What you want to do is you want to go side to side. You want to cause whatever it is you're whisking to collide into itself. You don't want to do that. That's doing nothing except making my eggs really dizzy. They just look like they're getting really dizzy in them, okay? This is not whisking. This is whisking. This is when you cause collisions and you really good things happening, okay? Not this, we're going with that. So that's a really good whisk. Right, so that is whisked well. What I did with my asparagus is I separated the tips from the stems. Okay, I just cut these maybe half an inch, and I just cut the stems off completely.
So you could peel those stems then, like Mary Eve was saying.
Yeah, if it gets a little bit woody toward the bottom, you can just go ahead and peel it, and it's very tender. And in fact, the stems of asparagus are a little bit waxy, so it makes it very difficult for flavors to go in asparagus. So if you want them to be softer and take on more flavors, peel them and they'll suck those flavors of whatever you're cooking with right in. Okay. This is boiling like crazy. Hooray! That's great news. I'm going to turn this down to low. Just to low. Put the lid on. That is, it's gone. That thing is done. Okay. Onions look pretty darn good. I'm just going to make sure everything's right up here in the front so you can see it.
Just the asparagus stem.
Right. So onions are good. Starting to get a little brown, which is nice. I'm only putting the stems in right now because the stems are going to take a little bit longer to cook. Give those a saute. Put them back over the heat. One of the things I have not mentioned is frittatas are usually started on the stove top and then they're finished in the oven. So I have my oven set at 325, nothing too hot because it has eggs. We want to make sure it's cooked quite nicely, very gently. And the rack is on the medium level, so 325 medium level. And the purpose of that is that we're going to cook the ingredients, put the eggs in there, and then finish it off nice and gently so they're not rubbery. There's something very succulent, actually quite nice. Okay. So asparagus stems, let it go for just a couple of minutes just to get a head start. Starting to look really nice. It smells lovely. Asparagus doesn't need too long to cook. I don't want them to be mushy. I don't want them to be like when you're going down aisle 2 of a 7-Eleven and there's like the glass jar of asparagus in some sort of solution. They're just like, right? Okay, so we're gonna pretend that this conversation strike it. Okay, it never happened. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add the asparagus tips and we'll cook it for probably an additional minute. Okay, here we go. Asparagus tips are in. I'm gonna give it a saute. One of the things that's really great about cooking with really fresh ingredients, it doesn't take long. Another thing that you might be surprised by is a little bit of fresh mint. Mint and asparagus are just buds. I think they room together in college. They're really, really fond of one another. So some fresh mint, which grows like crazy right now in the summertime. For those of you that like to garden, you'll know that fresh mint gets its own pot. If you put it in the ground, it is gone. It takes over everything else. And you're like, what's that over there? You're like, it's mint. So a little bit of fresh mint. I'll just stack them up on each other. So it's like a pile up of a bunch of kids in a sleepover where no one gets any sleep. All right. Just run your knife through it a couple times. And I will throw in the mint, the eggs. One more thing we haven't discussed is feta. I happen to really like feta cheese. If you don't, goat cheese would work as well. When you're picking out feta cheese, go to your cheese person and ask to taste it. Taste them. One of the things that makes my heart cry a little bit is when you buy something for $5-6 and you bring it home and you're like, this is too salty. I just don't like it. And you keep it in the fridge because you feel guilty. You don't want to return it because you opened it. Just stop the madness. Trademark copyright. Just ask to try it. So bring the cheesemonger, a couple different types of feta, whatever cheese you're looking for, if there's a selection, and say, I want to try these too. And they'll be like, great, and they'll give you some. Do not be afraid to ask, okay? So I know I like this feta. Creamy, not too salty. I love it. So what I'm going to do is do a little feta, do a little dance, get down tonight, okay? I'm going to go ahead and crumble over some feta.
Before the eggs?
Yeah,
Cool.
scribble over some feta. It's not gonna melt. You know? Feta's
Yeah, it
a little
won't melt,
on the lighter
yeah.
side.
What's that,
So
Mary?
I said it won't melt. So I wanted to say something about the mint, which is particular to stomach cancers. So interestingly enough, in science, there's a valve that shuts off this esophagus from the stomach, right? So there's this valve. Sometimes
Pyloric?
pyloric is the lower one that shuts off the stomach to the small intestine.
Got it.
Sometimes that valve can be removed, during surgery, or it most likely is. Mint is something that releases that valve on a clinical level. So if you're really suffering from any kind of reflux, heartburn, take mint out of your diet, spearmint, peppermint, all of those, and see if that helps. Because so some people take peppermint to release like bowel contractions, because clinically there's a chemical in mint that not slows down, but helps release tension in your bowel. But it can also do that at that valve. So that's important to know, that if I'm in treatment and I'm having problems with reflux or heartburn, or I'm soon after surgery, don't do any mint.
Wow.
That's good to know. Mary and Eve, does basil also have that effect?
No, it's just if there's a chemical, a part of the mint that does it. No other herb does that.
Okay.
So interesting.
Well, then
It
if
is
you-
interesting.
If you find that is not very good for your treatment and mint is affecting you in an adverse way, you want to have something that's herbaceous, go ahead and sub out mint for basil.
Yeah,
Equally as lovely.
and easy to grow like a weed.
Yes.
Well, even in Austin, Texas, where it's like 110 degrees, it grows really well.
Check.
Okay. So all I did was I put the feta over top, I put the mint and or basil or nothing, and then spread the eggs over the whole thing. Let it sit for just a couple seconds, and then into the oven it goes. And that'll take about 11 to 13 minutes, depending upon how hot and how effective your oven is. Okay, so
Got it.
Okay, great. So Sarah's in charge of the time. Let's recap. Soup, crushing it. All we have to do is just let it go. Forget about it. We have the frittata with the preserved lemon. That's well underway as well. So let's make a little salad, shall we?
Loretta says mint helps relieve my bile reflux.
Oh, well, there you go.
which is the other end, right? So bile is produced by the liver and then shot into the small bowel. And that's what I was saying with mint, it relaxes the bowel. So in some people it can help if they're having, gas or pain or, IBS kind of stuff. But on the upper part of it, it can be the problem for the reflux.
So fascinating.
That is really.
It is really, really, yeah. It's, all of our medicine came from plants, at one point.
Mhm.
So they also have properties to them.
Right.
Yeah.
It matters.
And now, Mary, even I make mint chocolate chip ice cream, every bite I'll be thinking of you. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad. We'll find out. I'll get back to you.
Cocoa, cacao, antioxidant,
I know, right? Thank you. I'm so glad you said that.
the darker the better.
Cacao.
Thank God.
Okay, the salad. Again,
Speaking of mint,
speaking of mint.
Yeah, mint.
Or not.
Mint chocolate chip ice cream.
yes.
Well, we'll get to that maybe the next time. Maybe in the fall we can get to that where it's nice and cold. So I'm gonna start, we're gonna make a mixed herb salad, okay, with the lemon citronette, really simple, quite approachable. A lot of people will email me and say, I have this recipe for salsa. What do I do with the rest of these herbs? I only use half of it. Well, this is a really great way to add so much flavor into your diet and not throw away any of those fresh herbs that people seem to take up a lot of real estate in our refrigerator drawers. Okay, so I'm going to start with the citronette, and the only difference between a vinaigrette and a citronette is that there's no vinegar in this. So I'm calling it a citronette because it's just lemon juice and a little bit of olive oil. This is the shallot. So I'm going to go ahead and do my best to do a small dice on this. If that's too fancy for you, which it does seem a little bit fancy what I'm doing here, go ahead and chop it like it owes you money.
Here.
Just chop it. And then when you think you're done chopping it, go ahead and continue chopping it. The advantage of having the knife skills to where you can make everything sort of uniform in a small dice is that every bite you'll get a tiny little pop of shallot. If you want to take the route where you just chop the heck out of it, make sure there isn't like a really big piece in there. That's really my only hesitation as a teacher, is just to make sure that your guest or yourself or your family doesn't get one bite that's just going to be crazy shallot. Okay, I would rather the shallot pieces be much smaller than too large. Then I take my bench scraper. It's like $5.95. For those of you that bake, you definitely know a bench scraper. It certainly saves a lot more time than having to do this with your chef's knife. When you do this and you do that, and then you do this, just grab a bench scraper. It's a lot easier. Okay, so the
Great
shallot
tool.
is in there. If you happen to have a shallot that's a little bit on the tearful side, kind of makes you cry a little bit, you never know what you're gonna get. There's really no way of finding out. This is what you do. You grab a lemon, right? Grab a lemon, and we're gonna squeeze the lemon juice over the top of the shallot. I'm gonna use my hand to catch any sort of seeds that might be in there. If you have, a citrus press, you can go ahead and use that as well. I don't like this, Jeremy. I just don't like cleaning it. I don't mind washing my hands. Okay. And the thing about the citric acid is the citric acid will break down some of the harshness that's in that shallot, right? If you really like lemon, we really like lemons, go ahead and give it an extra squeeze. Catching lemons, this goes to the side. So this bowl is just macerating, is the term, the shallot with a little bit of lemon juice. Pretty simple. That's essentially your citronette. Really simple. Okay. The only other thing we have to add is olive oil. I'm not going to add that just yet. So what herbs do we have here? Well, we have mint, for those of you that, again, I just learned, where mint is something that can be beneficial to you. Mint is really lovely to have. It holds up pretty darn well. When you get any sort of herbs, this is considered a soft herb. So is basil, right? Basil is also a soft herb. It's really big leaves. Something that's considered like a hardier herb would be rosemary, yeah, or it's more like a sticky texture. Sticky meaning like a stem. Thyme is the same way. Anything that's soft like this will be a little bit more reactive when it's in your crisper drawer. So what you want to do is when you get them in the bunches, if they have a little twisty tie, remove that twisty tie, wrap them in a dry paper towel and put them in a plastic bag, but not tied up. Gives them a little bit of breathing room. Otherwise, they start to turn black and they break down a little bit too quickly. Okay. So I
Chef,
have
the other
this-
thing about herbs are if you think about them, they're like cancer fighting bombs because they're so concentrated in their phytochemicals. So I always tell people if, again, they're weeds, they can grow in a pot, in a windowsill or on my deck, and then pull them off. And then at the end of the season, I think I said this before, I harvest them is what I call them. And I throw them into freezer bags and just throw them in my freezer. And that way all winter long, I've got fresh herbs. They're so easy, but they're huge cancer fighters.
Do you put them in the freezer whole, or do you chop them up, or just whole?
Yeah, I used to chop them up and I'm like, nah, I don't need to do that. So now I have a whole herb drawer in my freezer.
Oh, I love it. We're getting a little show and tell here.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you seeing it?
Yes.
My rose,
Wow.
my rosemary.
Black baggie
Well,
full.
that's cool.
Yeah. I had really good luck with sage this year, so I have a huge amount of sage, which I'll use, during Thanksgiving and Christmas. But yeah, I used to do all kinds of things, and then I realized if I just put them in a freezer bag and throw them in the freezer, they fall off the stem by themselves. Less work.
Ah, so
Well,
smart.
easy. Speaking of
Brilliant.
stems, that's a great segue. We didn't even plan this, did we? That was a perfect segue. That was completely.
We're like twins. We're twins.
Very, again, this is why Debbie Drew Foundation is gonna get us a plane too. Woo! Okay, so stems. This is cilantro. It's being held upside down. For those of you that do not like cilantro, I get it. It's a big soap bubble. Let it go. Do not add cilantro. For those of you that love cilantro or happen to like cilantro, one of the things that's will save you a little bit of time. You don't have to pick the leaves. The stems are very delicate. The stems have the same flavor as the leaves. So we'll just go ahead and chop up the stems all the way to the leaf end. Okay.
Parsley is the same. Parsley is the same way. Use the stems.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but also with parsley, the one that I like, this is called flat leaf,
Flat leaf.
or AKA Italian parsley. There's a curly parsley, and you've seen it in a Red Lobster commercial.
It's a garnish.
It's the only green thing. Think about it. Everything else is brown. The only green thing you see is curly parsley. But this is flat leaf parsley. Again, with the whole, things getting stuck in my teeth and fearful, night fits of waking up, not having floss. That's another reason why I really like this. I have a lot of stem and that, so what I can do is instead of picking up individual leaves, just go toward the end and just sort of tear the tops right off. Okay, there's no need to go way up next to the leaves, but we do want those leaves because parsley is a breath freshener. It has real flavor to it. It's not just a garnish. It's actually really lovely. And when I hope you make this fresh herb salad, which also can double as a garnish if you don't add the lettuce leaves to it, it's fantastic. Over chicken, over fish, over vegetables. It's really quite universal. And we all have them in our crisper drawers. Okay, so very gently pulling together. I'm only going to go over it just a couple of times.
So what's in that? It's basil.
Basil, mint, cilantro, and parsley.
Got it.
All right, so because this is going to be part of a salad, I don't want to chop them so fine that it's just like lost, but I also want it to be small enough to where, when your guest picks up a fork and there's like a whole basil leaf sticking off, and they're trying to do a fighting with the basil, and it's like, don't do it. I'm innocent. Okay. So you have this big, beautiful pile of fresh herbs. It smells really nice in here. It smells like my favorite Vietnamese restaurant. It smells really lovely. Okay. And all we've done is just chop some herbs. Okay.
Your frittata's at 11 minutes.
Oh, okay. Let's check the frittata. How do you know if the frittata is done? It sounds like there should be a punchline, and there is no punchline. The way you do it is the center part should just have a little wobble still left in it. Not like a rubbery wobble, but just a little bit of soft wobble right in the middle. Okay.
Eggs are also really easy to digest. So that's a good protein source. And, this could be a lunch, it could be a dinner, it could be a snack. Like I could see you like doing individual portions of this and kind of pushing it away into the freezer, and I can pull that out if I need a snack. And it's really good protein, and protein is so important for cancer patients undergoing treatment and then in recovery. So I love all of this.
Well, I mean, if we were anywhere in Europe, I mean, you would have this for dinner, as you were talking about. You could literally take this with a citronette, serve it with a slice of that beauty.
Mm.
And that's a pretty darn good, flavorful meal that's easy to digest. Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty simple. A
Let
lot of
me
protein.
put this on the closer
I
camera.
mean, it's
That's nice.
pretty darn gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool.
And when things, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
I was
Mary.
gonna say, when things look appealing and I don't have an appetite, it's a lot easier for me to eat it if it's pretty.
That makes sense. Well, you're gonna love this soup.
So I,
Because we used a nonstick pan and a little bit of butter to flavor it up, which is butter and eggs go together, so it's not gonna stick. And to prove it, this is how I like to serve it when it's still warm, and just whoop,
easy.
kapow,
Nice.
right? Looks pretty good.
Beautiful.
So a question for Mary Eve.
Yes.
My family member has just been diagnosed with stomach cancer and will be starting chemotherapy soon. Our family's going to help with meals. What should we focus on? And also, what should we avoid?
Oh, okay. Great question. Yeah, you want to get prepared, right? You want to have a game plan. I like things like soups. I think those are really well tolerated with treatment. I like things that are just easy to digest, like the eggs. I like peanut butter. It's protein that you kind of want to think about in a different way. Sometimes when people are in chemotherapy, the smell of cooking of meats, it can be really nauseating, but things that are room temperature to cold can work really well. So eggs can be room temperature. They can be cold. Peanut butter or nut butters don't have a smell to them. Cheeses can also sometimes work. So I like the feta, but any other kind of hard cheese is good protein, but doesn't have an odor to it. I would try to prep meals ahead and keep them in the freezer. But the important thing is do individual portions. So if the patient is by themselves, they just can pop a portion in the microwave and have it. Or if you're sitting down to a family meal and the family meal is not something that the patient wants, an individual something can come out and the patient can eat that. I think it's important as a family that you support the patient and don't treat them like bring them to the table. Because sometimes I have people like, oh, I'm feeding them in their bedroom. I'm like, no, bring them to the table, because when you sit at the table, it's such a more enjoyable experience. So I would focus on things that have protein in them, like eggs and nut butters and cheeses. I would also focus on things that are just easy to digest, baked potatoes, pasta, white rice. Vegetables can sometimes be a little iffy. The smell of like broccoli and cauliflower can be nauseating, but going green beans or carrots or sweet potatoes or tomato sauces, those are all things that can be really easy to digest. And so I would think of cold, not strong odor, but nourishing at the same time.
Fantastic.
You know, overcooked broccoli or cauliflower makes me nauseous too. So
Yeah.
I think it's a universal thing, to be quite honest with you.
If you're queasy, you don't want to be smelling broccoli cooking. That just
Oh,
is-
God, no.
I'll pass on that. Ugh. So what I have here are some fresh radishes. I grew up, I would go over and visit my grandparents, and grandmother would take a piece of white bread and some mayonnaise and then put this little cobblestone of radishes on there. A little bit of salt, and that was my first introduction to radishes, which is quite lovely. But if you have some radishes around, they seem to hold up in the refrigerator indefinitely almost. Very thinly sliced, just to give you a crunch and maybe a little bit of heat.
They roast really well too. Like if they're too much of a bite for me,
Yeah.
but I roast them, it takes
Yeah.
that bite away and it makes them a little bit sweet.
Perfect.
They're delicious. Yeah.
Perfect. And plus it's it's a color contrast. You've got this beautiful green and you've got this sort of like scalloped red on the outside, and the different colors of radishes as well. And this is just bone white center that's in the middle, which almost mimics the shallot with that lemon juice that's in there. So it's just a way of really upping your culinary game, a lot more flavor, some really good textures, beautiful visuals, using a lot of the ingredients you may already have in your crisper drawer in your refrigerator right now. I decided to throw in some walnuts, some roasted salted walnuts. You could do pecans as well. Really finely chopped. I don't want to crunch on a walnut. If you like that, then go for it. If digesting walnuts or nuts is difficult, we can of course omit those. But I finely chopped them, and we'll sprinkle those in there right now.
And I have another question for Mary Eve. You have one last ingredient. Is that the mixed greens?
Yeah, mixed greens, and we're just gonna mix this up with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper.
Question for Mary Eve. My family wants me to do a plant-based diet, but this is not appealing to me. Is it really necessary that I follow a vegetarian diet?
So a plant-based diet doesn't automatically mean vegetarian. So a plant-based diet, you're focusing on plant foods, but you can still work in, animal foods. It's not uncommon that if you're, in treatment or post-gastrectomy, that plants are really hard to digest. So the family members need to keep that in mind. It's like, right now, I just need to focus on probably getting the good nutrition in so that the patient is well nourished. And if it can be some plant, that's great, but it's not as important as afterwards. So there is a lot of really good science in people that eat more plants have less diseases. And so a plant-based diet is recommended by major health organizations, not only for cancer, but for heart disease and diabetes and obesity and vascular problems. So I do recommend a plant-based diet. That doesn't mean vegetarian. I can still do, fish, and I can still do chicken, and I can still do animal products. I just focus on the plant, but it's got to be the right time. And so if the patient's family is really pushing that, I have a discussion with the family members, like, right now we really need to be focusing on not losing weight, not losing strength, not losing energy, tolerating the treatment to get to my next steps. And if you're giving the patient foods that they don't want to eat, that's going to go down a really bad path, and it can then affect actually survival. So you have to look at that time, what's the most important thing at that time? If the patient's having difficulty eating, difficulty digesting things, a plant-based diet would actually be a negative, because it's not going to help them to get through treatment well and get to the next steps of whatever that is for that patient. So yes, a plant-based diet, I wholly recommend that at the right time. And when I put it in those terms, they go, oh, yeah, I get that. I understand. This is not the right time to do that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary Eve.
Great question. Excellent question. So we have what we set out to do as far as starting our luncheon, I guess we would call it, our Debbie's Dream Foundation luncheon. I hope everyone brought a fork. It's not a big salad, but if we all share it with a couple bites, that sounds like it would work. Okay. So this is your fresh mixed herb salad with a lemon citronette, lots of different lovely herbs. The walnuts, which are roasted and salted, finely chopped, and some radish. Really simple. And again, if you just kept the greens out, that'd be a wonderful topping for the frittata that we just made, or some fish, chicken, vegetables, whatever you got. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and also start. Let's do a dessert, shall we? A simple dessert. If you've ever had a panna cotta or cooked cream, pretty simple to make. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of gelatin. Where's that bad boy? Here we go. A little bit of gelatin, which is this, and a touch of water. And I'm going to do what's called blooming the gelatin. You can't just throw it right in the whole mixture, or else it starts to set and it gets a little bit rubbery. So what I'm going to do is just mix that together and let that sit for just a couple of minutes. Okay, set this off to the side. Next thing you know, it's going to be a rubber ball, and we'll play with it for the rest of the evening. Okay, so just set that to the side. So all it is a little bit of water and some gelatin. Next thing we're going to need, because it's called cooked cream, is the Italian translation of panna cotta, is a teeny tiny little pan. You've always wondered, what are we keeping that little tiny easy bake oven pan for? This is what we're keeping it for. Okay, just
Hummingbird nectar is what I make in mine. Hummingbird nectar.
hummingbird nectar. Now that is I can't
go that high.
vocalize that high. The dogs in the neighborhood start to howl because it's so high humans can hear it. So this is a little bit of cream. If you can tolerate different types of sweeteners, you don't need a sweetener in this. If you just like the flavor of buttermilk, which I'll be adding in just a second, I like adding honey. And the reason for that is because honey has a flavor to it, whereas like sugar, even organic sugar, just tastes sweet. So I like a little bit of a flavor profile to a sweetener that I have. And honey definitely brings that to its game. Okay, it doesn't have to be a lot. This is going to serve 4 1/2 cup servings, okay, which is like a decent sized ramekin. And I'm going to put this over, say, medium heat. I just want this to heat through, come to a simmer. barely simmer, just enough to melt the honey.
This is a make ahead dessert.
Days ahead, you can make this, okay? While we're waiting for that to happen, it only takes a couple seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and use an immersion wand. Mary's favorite thing.
She's
I
like,
love my immersion.
Did somebody say immersion wand? Let me talk to you about that. What?
So I tell my
Immersion
patients,
wand.
get that, because transferring things into a blend, and I have a Vitamix, transferring things into a blender
Yeah.
is work. Can I just keep it in the same pot? Also, can I make a milkshake with it? Yes.
yes.
Yeah,
Also
Yes.
transferring boiling hot liquid, not
No.
advisable.
No, not advisable at all.
it's a little less rooting. But let's talk about going back to what I had said is earlier, once these vegetables are cooked, let's go ahead and just up our game as far as flavor. Doesn't take a lot, okay? I happen to like cinnamon when it comes to roasted carrots and sweet potatoes. So I'm gonna go a little cinnamon, right? We need some sort of special effect, sound effect. Or whatever that is. What else do I have? Ginger. Freshly grated ginger. How is that, Mary Eve?
It's a digestive aid. It's a
That- that
digestive
works.
aid. Yep. It
Okay,
helps with
great.
helps with nausea and
also ginger.
digestion.
I love it. And it brings this wonderful gentle heat, this wonderful complexity. So the ginger goes in there. Okay. And this third one might be a little bit, I grabbed the wrong one, might be a little bit unusual, depending on how you feel about heat. Here we go. Now, for this huge thing, it's filled up to about there. It's 4 cups of a lot of vegetables. I would use about 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. If heat
Oh,
affects you, omit it, clearly omit it.
I
You
thought you were going to put smoked paprika in it. I don't know
No,
why.
no, this is just a little bit of cayenne, and I'm a white dude from Virginia, so I'm not really big on a lot of heat, but I do like enough where I go, oh. That's my most creative response when it comes to heat. Oh, and that's a good thing.
And another question for Mary Eve. I completed my stomach cancer with chemotherapy and gastrectomy 4 months ago, and I struggle to regain weight and strength. I want to feel, quote, normal. What are ways I can feel better?
Yeah, that's pretty universal. I mean, you go through the chemotherapy, which has side effects, and then I get to surgery, which then has side effects. And it can take up to a year for most people to kind of get whatever their normal is going to be. So you got to give yourself time for all of that new anatomy to get used to itself. So now I have things removed and attached, but the body's amazing. It can adapt. So I have people who come out of surgery and they're literally eating like tablespoons of baby food over a period of time. And then they get to 1/4 cup sizes of more solid things. Then they get to 1/2 cup sizes. So eventually each week away from, each month away from, I'm getting a little bit better. There are some people who will end up not being able to do dairy because it dumps, or they may not be able to get to, 3 meals. They may need to do, 4 or 5 smaller meals. After a year, most people will say, this is my anatomy. So 4 months, you still got a lot of time to recover. It's just giving your body that time. Make sure that you eat your protein first, that you drink and eat separately, that you try to get, if you're drinking nutritional supplements, to try to get more calories in. That can also be a really good idea, is to drink things that have nutrition in them. Water is water, but could I drink something that has nutrition in it in between, so that I can get the nutrition that I need in the easiest way that I can? I find taller males do better than shorter females. And I think that's an anatomy thing. They have more space. But hopefully after a year, you get to be where your new normal is going to be.
Well, speaking of not new normal, you're looking at a very short chef. I mean, I'm 5'10", but my best friend growing up, Jason Hicks, was 6'4", and that dude, he could put it away. He could. I don't know how he did it. He was like an anomaly. It's so crazy. So we have a couple different things that all I've done was serve them up. Okay, because I know we're going to be really close on time, and I don't want anyone to miss out on this fun part.
Pretty.
As far as serving
Gorgeous,
up.
gorgeous.
And as we discussed earlier, you do have the toppings that can go with this, which is quite lovely.
They
the
don't know.
frittata.
You're just on this close camera,
Okay,
so if you
okay.
can show that real quick.
So we have this lovely salad as well.
Mhm.
Okay. And if you had some extra, I mean, that would go really well, because lemon and fresh herbs with the frittata would work. So these sort of things really work, they sort of intermingle freely. So whatever you're looking forward to, this can happen. Super easy, really universal, make ahead of time. Lots of different flavor profiles. I already have one made ahead, so I didn't blitz it, but that's all that happened. Put the ingredients in, put in immersion one, and that's what you get, okay? We have 3 different things happening here. The 4th of which, I already got started with the panna cotta. What I did is I heated up this cream, the water, and the gelatin that was in here. All I do is I put that in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this together, okay? I'm going to mix it. What happens is the warm cream is going to melt the gelatin. That's all that does, right? Now that doesn't make a whole lot, but that's where the buttercream comes into play.
Buttermilk.
I'm sorry, yes, buttermilk comes into play. And just to show you how simple this is, not a lot of ingredients. I have buttermilk. Yeah. I don't want to heat buttermilk. There's not a lot of fat in buttermilk. It's actually very low fat. If you heated buttermilk, it would split and it just looks really gross. Now this is nice and dissolved. I don't feel any little crunchy pieces in there. It's all in solution. I can stir these together because this has the gelatin in it. Stir that. If you like vanilla, like I do, you can add a little bit of vanilla. If you're gonna make this for somebody else, and instead of doing vanilla, you're like, you know, I like a little amaretto in mine. It has the same alcohol content, so you can just do a little bit of that. You can actually move it in whatever direction you want. Okay. That is it. This is the base to panna cotta. The only thing this has to do now is chill for about 4 to 5 hours, and it sets up beautifully. How well does it set up? This is the finished panna cotta.
And then I have a question for Mary Eve.
Yes, please.
Let me just show that.
Just to show you. You gonna close up on this one? It's almost like a
and-
flan as far as texture, the way that I've made it. Very
Yeah.
delicate, very sort of like wobbly,
Mm,
right? Not rubbery at all. And you get this beautiful creamy or cooked cream texture. Look at that.
pretty.
Almost falls off the spoon, and you can serve that with fresh fruit.
All right, question for Mary Eve.
Please.
Will this diet help to build the stomach walls and mucosa? Because gastritis gets you feeling hungry, like you have your stomach empty due to multiple erosions, making the stomach acid hard to control.
Will this diet? Can you read that again? This diet.
Will this diet help to build the stomach walls and mucosa? Gastritis gets you feeling hungry, like you have your stomach's empty due to multiple erosions, making the stomach acid hard to control.
It's really interesting. Okay, so first off, the building blocks of healthy cells is protein. If I'm not getting enough protein in my diet, I'm not going to be able to heal my mucosal lining. So the mucosal lining is the lining of the gut, and we actually call it from our mouth all the way through. And if they're having erosions in that, if they don't have enough protein, they can't heal themselves. So I would say number 1, protein. Chef did that there with the eggs and actually the walnuts. Some in the panna cotta because of the buttermilk. If they're having problem with stomach acid, it may be that they need to go on a stomach acid reducer. And that's very common depending on where you are in your treatment. So I'm thinking what we've presented today, what Chef has done today, hits a lot of marks for a lot of things. I love the soup because that's easy to digest and it's got really good vitamins in it. I love the egg dish. That's the good protein. I love the panna cotta, again, protein. And all of these things, not the salad so much, are very easy to digest. So yes, if you're talking about what we've done today, it should help with that.
This is
Fantastic.
dead to me. This salad, dead to me.
Bring it to Baltimore. I would love it for lunch today.
It wasn't even my idea. It's totally dead to me. So yes, a soup, your main and your dessert, bada bada bow, triple protein grandma slamming. Yeah, so as Sarah said at the beginning, if you sign up for this, the recipes will be available to you. I know our time has come to a close. I do have separation anxiety, definitely from Mary Eve, but I will see her on our road trip in 2020, whatever. Huge thanks to Debbie's Dream Foundation, and massive, massive thanks to all of you for tuning in. You could be anywhere else and doing anything else right now, and you've chosen to give your time with us so we can be together and spend some time and share information. So thank you the most for giving us your time and your attention and your wonderful questions. So I appreciate that.
And I'm
Thank
gonna,
you.
we have one more in this series
Yeah.
of healthy cooking demos with this team. So stick around because I'm gonna throw a slide up with the next date so you can mark it in your calendar.
Number
As-
4, that'll be number
That'll be
4.
number 4, as
Yeah.
well as a thank you to the sponsors who made this event possible. Lisa says, I joined a little late. Can't wait to get the recipes, especially for the soup. Thank you. Awesome, Lisa. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody who joined us.
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.
Stay cool out there
Yes, stay cool.
Stay well.
and stay well.
We'll see you all soon.
Bon appetit.